The following program contains adult content and sexual themes. Viewer discretion is advised. And it contains murder. Lots and lots of murder.
You stinking bastard.
People tell me, hey, you're gonna go die and go to hell. At least I'm not alone.
Time for 911, where's your emergency?
Oh, this is Sandy. For 31 Rock, Plymouth Road.
What's the problem?
Send the police.
Hey guys, don't be a hero, mate. And I said, I'm not trying to be a hero, but the police are coming.
One in the chest, one in the head. Fired by Detective Sergeant Roger Rogerson.
I was branching out. That's when the cannibalism started, eating of the heart and the arm muscle.
I would have nailed Carl Williams' hands to a coffee table and just pulled it out of his backside. Carl Williams is a wobbly bottomed little cherub-faced little boy whose life would be.
I'd harm someone each time I'd kill someone. There'd be an enormous amount, especially at first, enormous amount of horror, guilt, remorse afterwards. But then that impulse to do it again would come back even stronger.
Buenos dias and welcome to another episode of Bloody Murder. My name is Barney Black.
And I'm Tara Saraban.
We are a weekly true crime podcast focusing on some of the lesser known crime stories from Australia
and around the world.
What will you be covering this week, Tara?
I'm actually doing a Canadian case this week. And of course he's a serial killer because predictable.
That's your jam.
That's my jam. So he's the monster of the Miramichi. He actually had committed a murder earlier and gone to prison for it. But then he escaped from prison and went back to where he grew up to inflict absolute terror and mayhem on the community he grew up in because he felt that they had wronged him somehow.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, it's pretty dark for a change.
Well, I'm gonna do an Australian killer again.
I'm gonna do an Australian.
The Kimberley killer. He's a German tourist who came over to Australia and did not ingratiate himself into the public eye.
No. Well, the word killer kind of makes me think that.
Yes. So before we begin, we've been listening to a lot of other podcasts this week, and we want to talk about that for just a little bit.
Yeah. Well, Barney, you've got the kind of job where you can listen all day. I'm very jealous of that.
I can. I'm a graphic artist. I take a brief, I put the cans in, and I listen to a podcast pretty much all day.
I think that's dreamy. I manage people, so I have to listen to them and talk to them, which means that I can't have the cans in all the time. But I have spent some time this week listening to some podcasts because there's some really great ones out there.
They are. One that's particularly stood out to me is Misconduct. It's by a couple of women in Minnesota, I believe,
Hey.
Eileen and Colleen. And
the Lean Girls.
The Lean Girls. And their murders I've never heard of, and really well researched and
excellent.
Yeah, really good.
It's always good to hear about crimes that you haven't heard to death, like
absolutely
bloody Ted Bundy.
Quite moving stuff.
Cool. Okay.
Another one was That's Why We Drink.
Well, I can relate to the title. Jesus.
There are a couple of women from LA, Em and Christine, and they credit Boxed Wine as another one of their cast members.
That's brilliant.
Though I think it's Christine drinks milkshakes.
Her milkshakes bring all the wine to the yard.
Something like that.
Right. Okay. Makes sense.
That's a great show. They do a lot of true crime stuff. Even some stuff I've heard of. They did Black Dahlia recently, and they had a new take on that. But they do lots of really spooky ghost stories too, and it gives me chills.
Did you get a bit scared at work?
I did get a bit scared at work.
One that I've heard that I know you listen to as well is a new one out of Alaska called Murder Under the Midnight Sun. Yeah, that's by a girl called Ari, and she does great work on that. Really good research. And just really tastefully and beautifully considered the way that she presents the cases. I
know, it's like Alaska as an unspoken character in her narratives too.
It's definitely the case.
Yeah.
Kind of like New York was in Sex and the City, but totally different.
Just like all those snow-covered mountains in Fortitude or something like that. I love that show.
Yeah, it's really atmospheric.
And we're actually doing a what do we call it?
A bit of an ad swap, actually.
A bit of an ad swap, a bit of cross-promotion with Murder in the Sun. Now, we don't align ourselves...
Murder Under the Midnight Sun.
Murder Under the Midnight Sun.
Murder in the Sun. That's more our thing.
Sorry, Ari. Yeah, we don't just align ourselves with any old podcast. We think this is a bit of a sister podcast.
Only the sexy podcast.
We've got a little bit of a clip from Ari from Murder Under the Midnight Sun.
Murder Under the Midnight Sun.
All right, let's hear it.
Hey guys, this is Ariel, host of Murder Under the Midnight Sun, an Alaskan true crime podcast. I've lived in Alaska now for over 30 years and have been a true crime junkie for almost as long, and decided to combine those two things into a podcast. I'll be covering a wide variety of crimes from all across the state, everything from mass murders to serial killers to missing persons cases and beyond. So if you want to hear some compelling true crime stories that have never been covered by any other podcast, or hear about some horrible serial killers whose names you've never heard, go ahead and give me a listen. You can find me on iTunes and Stitcher, and follow me on Twitter at MurderTheSun. Thanks.
Murder Under the Midnight Sun, indeed.
Yes.
Nice one, Ariel.
I'm very much looking forward to hearing about some unknown Alaskan serial killers.
And her last episode was on some missing persons, which I found quite moving. Great, good stuff. Now, to our listeners...
Yes. We like them.
We like them
too.
We like them
too. We like them a lot.
I've got a note.
I've
got a note here from Des Ackerman, who we fondly call Dackerman.
Dackerman.
He's a truck driver.
He is, and he says that he doesn't murder sex workers, and I kind of believe that he doesn't.
Oh, I hope he doesn't.
Yeah.
He wrote to me, I discovered if I farted whilst in the bath...
Hang on, wait. Let's give some context. Barney was talking about a girl who got beaten to death by her friend for farting recently, and it led on to the topic of farting. Des Ackerman didn't just start talking farts for no reason.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Flatus. Yes. I discovered if I farted whilst in the bath, I could catch the bubbles in a Tupperware plastic cup. My slightly older sister was usually in the bathroom after me and always complained about the stink after she washed her hair. Years went by and I thought no more of it until one day I came home on leave from the army and smack, my sis walloped me on the bonce.
It's right on the bonce.
Oh, that's the worst place to get walloped. Because she had finally figured out it was me all those years before leaving her a nice surprise.
Wow, that's some good brotherly love right there, Des.
Yeah, nice one, Dackerman.
Okay, I've got one from Lily Rolfe. We actually, in episode 11, we asked some questions about, because the internet slave master guy, when he murdered his Polish girlfriend, he said that she'd actually been deported from America for smoking marijuana. Now, she said, in case no one, and we asked, like, is that a thing that can still happen? Like, is that a thing, or did he just make up some random shit? Anyway, Lily Rolfe said, in case no one answered your two questions on America, yes, you could be deported now and in the 1990s for smoking marijuana if you're not a citizen. We also were asking about fireworks because they're illegal in Australia. But she's saying that fireworks and firecrackers are legal to buy in some states of America. It all depends on where you live. She grew up in New York, so you can't buy them there. And only see them in official shows. But now she's in Pennsylvania, where it's legal to buy them. And apparently it just freaked her out the first time she saw some guys selling them on the side of the road.
Hey, little girl, you want to buy a cracker?
I would love to buy fireworks on the side of the road.
Step into my van.
I would not be stepping into anyone's fucking van.
Don't ever step into someone's van.
No, even if they say they've got puppies and firecrackers and cake.
Yeah. No.
No van.
Absolutely. This one, Tara, from Peter Hanlon. Hanlon. Why did I have problems with that?
I really don't know. Maybe because it was deceptively simple.
Peter Hanlon says, grandmother butter, thank you.
I like how formal he is. We were talking about grandma butter.
Grandmother butter, thank you. You're welcome, Peter.
Yeah, enjoy that grandmother butter. Now I've got one from Sarah Louise. She's from California. She says, I'm educating myself on some of your serial killers, being Australian ones, and the Truro murders came up a lot. Quick question on that. How did the police know that Miller wasn't just blaming the whole thing on Worrell, since he was obviously dead and unable to tell his side of the story? I know Miller claimed he was gay, but again, the entire confession is from his mouth and not dead Worrell. What if Miller were in fact the main raper and murderer and he pinned it on the dead dude so he wouldn't look bad? Was that ever looked into? So, look, it was actually looked into. And they couldn't find any evidence to suggest it. She's definitely got a point about it all being from Miller's perspective, though, because Worrell was dead. I buy that Worrell was the rapey one, though, because he actually already had a criminal record for raping women. He's also the one that would hunt down the women and, like, convince them to get in the car with them. I imagine if Miller was more... I imagine if Miller was more the rapey one, he probably would have kept raping after Worrell was dead, but he didn't. But I do think that Miller was probably more of an accomplice than he let on, and he would probably help restrain the girls while Worrell was doing horrible things to them, rather than this whole go for a walk thing that he said he did.
Likely story.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a gap between one of them dying. It was a car accident, I believe.
Yeah, Worrell died, and it was around 2.5 years before they actually started investigating the crimes. So that's a bit of time where Miller could have been being rapey and horrible, but we haven't actually, there's no evidence to suggest that he was.
Good question.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks, Sarah Louise.
So, let's talk about the Kimberley killer.
Do it.
Do it?
Do it.
Okay. Josef Thomas Schwab was born in Starnberg, West Germany on November 25th, 1960, and died on June 19th, 1987. Those who knew Josef considered him to be polite and correct, ready to help, and a rather shy individual. He was considered a loner, aren't they all?
Usually, yeah. There's not he was really well balanced and had a ton of friends.
Yeah.
You don't hear a lot of that.
Well, he had few friends and acquaintances, and he never married and had no children.
Well, he's only 27 when he died, though. So,
some people have had 3 wives by then.
Some of them have had 9.
That's right. At the age of 15, Josef became a member of the Rifle Association, named Wildschützen.
What does that stand for?
Wildschützen.
Shooting wild stuff?
Yeah. In his hometown of Pocking.
Also a nice word.
Yeah, where he remained a member until 1981. He was a dedicated shooter and took a great deal of interest in firearms.
Where have I heard that before?
Yeah. Josef visited Australia twice. The first occasion, he arrived in June 1981, leaving West Germany and travelling to South Australia, where he lived in Henley Beach, Adelaide. Whilst in Adelaide, he worked as a cabinet maker.
Well, Adelaide needs cabinets too.
You need your Kindersargs, mate.
Yeah, that's the Kindersargs that are mounted on the wall. Kindersarg being a child's coffin, for those of you who didn't listen to the Jürgen Bartsch episode.
During his stay in South Australia, Josef became a member of the Southern Cross Pistol Club. He purchased rifles and a Toyota Land Cruiser, and it was during his recreational breaks he hunted wild pigs.
Razorbacks.
On May 1984, Josef returned to Germany. He worked as a night watchman and was employed in this field between April 1985 and April 1987. It was at this time he decided to return to Australia. During his time as a night watchman, Josef wore a Ruger 357 Magnum caliber revolver and participated in firearms training. This training included combat shooting.
Right. He knows how to use it, huh?
Yeah. Josef had criminal convictions in West Germany for forcibly entering a passenger car, theft from a restaurant.
It was dine and dash?
Dine and dash. And breaking and entering apartments. Prior to his departure for Australia in April 1987, he gave no indication to his family that he was completely bonkers and stark raving nuts.
He didn't go all right, guys, I'm off to Australia now. By the way, I'm homicidal and cray-cray.
Their family doctor last saw Josef in January 1986, and as far as he was aware, Josef had not suffered any serious illness and had no history of mental problems.
Okay. It sounds as though he's going to get some, though, doesn't it?
So, Josef obtained some traveller's checks in Munich, West Germany. He departed from Frankfurt for Australia on April 16, 1987, travelling via Bangkok and arriving in Brisbane on April 18, 1987. He gained entry into Australia on a German passport, and on arrival in Brisbane, he checked into room 40 at the Atchley Hotel in Queen Street, Brisbane.
Wow. If anyone wants to go see if that hotel's still there.
I don't know why that was an important detail. But
I think it's the most important part of the whole freaking story.
It's not going to come up later, trust me.
It really is. That's it's the punchline.
Later that week, Josef went to the ANZ Bank in Brisbane and obtained a cash advance of $1,000 after reporting that he'd lost all his traveller's checks. This was, in fact, a lie.
Oh, gateway.
It was fraud.
Gateway fraud.
Gateway fraud. He had not lost any traveller's checks.
Joseph.
In fact, he cashed $4,000 in traveller's checks at the Westpac in Wollongabba and a further $1,400 from another bank.
Wow, that would be seriously cashed up.
So there's a bit of fraud for you.
Yeah, at
No,
that time.
it gets worse. April 22, 1987, Joseph hires a distinct Toyota 4Runner from the Brisbane Airport Avis. He used the name and address of a non-related Schwab in Munich.
Non-related Schwab.
Like, I don't know. Freddie Schwab.
Yeah.
The fraud plus a false address may be some indication of what was about to happen.
Covering his tracks a bit.
The next day, Joseph went to the Five Ways firearms shop in Logan Road, Wollongabba.
Oh, they like it 5 ways.
Yeah. They like it 5 ways.
Yeah, I'm trying to actually think how that's physically possible, but I came up with it.
I'm just going to cut you off right here and say we don't need to know that.
Okay, all right.
He purchased 4 firearms, a Ruger self-loading Mini 14 rifle, a .223 caliber Seko bolt action, Forester Hunter rifle, and a .22 caliber bolt action.
And this is obviously before the Port Arthur massacre, before our gun laws changed, and you could just stroll on up and get your gun on.
He was just about to leave when he saw the Winchester 12-gauge pump action shotgun by the register, because that's how they...
Oh, that's where they leave it, for impulse buys.
Yeah.
And when people take their kids to the shop with them, and the kids are like, I want that Winchester! Pester power.
Now, I've got a list here of all the bullets he bought, but...
He bought a fuck ton of bullets.
He bought a fuck ton of bullets.
Like 3,000, is it?
3,000. There's full metal jackets, hollow point cartridges, soft point, SG buckshot cartridges.
A bullet for every
22
mood.
caliber cartridge. Anyway, there was 3,000 bullets and 4 guns, so he's going to war.
Yeah. Yes, that's not very comforting.
I couldn't find much what happened after that. He travelled through Queensland and the Northern Territory. We know this. He purchased petrol.
He probably went to Dreamworld, SeaWorld.
Well, there's no evidence of that.
Sizzler.
Unless he paid cash.
Yeah.
He purchased petrol in Diamata in Queensland on May 6, 1987. He received a parking ticket in Mount Isa, May 9th, 1987.
Well, his life of crime is really escalating, isn't it?
Yes. Helen June Anderson, owner of the Wayside Inn at Victoria River in the Northern Territory, saw Joseph and his distinct Toyota 4Runner with the red stripes at the inn about 5 p.m. on June 9, 1987. It's okay. He's in the Northern Territory.
Yeah.
It was also reported that a large number of buffalo had been shot on these planes and the horns removed. 10 pairs of buffalo horns were in the Toyota 4Runner when it was located later in Fitzroy Crossing in Western Australia.
What did he plan to do with buffalo horns? I'm thinking some kind of Ed Gein nipple belt situation. It's like a buffalo horn belt.
I don't know. You put them on your front of your car or something, don't you?
What, like 20 of them?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Seems excessive. He was making a tutu out of them.
I mean, hunting buffalo, like, they're not, like, going to attack you, are
I
they?
didn't even know we had buffalo. I think he freaking
Northern
killed them
Territory.
all. Still?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Remember that thing in Crocodile Dundee when he does that thing with his hands?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's a documentary, you know.
Yeah. Crocodile Dundee is a documentary. Everything in that did happen.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, Fremantle pensioner and former deputy mayor, or mayor, as you say in America, Marcus Bullen, 70, and his wife Winifred, son Lance Bullen, 40, and their daughter-in-law Joan were returning home to Western Australia from a holiday in the Northern Territory. The Bullens were travelling west on the Victoria Highway. They decided to stop and set up camp at the Wayside Inn, which is situated in the Gregory National Park on the banks of the Victoria River, near Fitzroy Station in the Northern Territory.
Okay, so it's an inn, but it also has a camping ground, and
Yes.
it's in the middle of fucking nowhere.
Yeah, it's in the Northern Territory. It's 518 kilometres, which is 322 miles southwest of Darwin.
Yeah, that's fuck off nowhere for sure.
So 9 a.m. the next morning, Marcus and Lance Bullen left the Wayside Inn to seek out a good fishing spot. They told their wives they'll be back in an hour. Timber Creek police were alerted during the afternoon when the men had failed to return to their campsite to collect their wives. Police searched all the popular fishing spots. The next morning they found Bullen's burnt-out Sigma station wagon next to the Victoria River at the high water line in the riverbed sand. 2 shallow graves were located nearby.
Oh.
The scene was secured and police in Darwin alerted to the find. Assistant Commissioner Neil Plum declared it a major crime, and a forensic team was sent to investigate. Vehicle tracks, footwear impressions, and drag marks were identified.
Oh, they can do a lot with vehicle tracks these days.
They can. Small areas of blood staining were found at the end and to the front of each side of the Bullen's vehicle tracks. Later they were identified. This confirmed the positions they were in when they were both executed. It appears that the shooter was already in the area at the time of the arrival of the Bullens, or had arrived very shortly after. It is thought that he waited until both men had got out of their car, and then, armed with a .223 caliber firearm, he ordered them both to lay on the ground on their stomachs and shot them both through the back.
Wow, that's like super cowardly. That's like cowardly with a cape on it, so cowardly.
The bullets entered the ground beneath them.
Jesus, dude.
Police found 2 distinct areas of blood staining beside where the vehicle had come to a stop. The blood in these areas were later identified as having come from both deceased Bullen's father and son. Wouldn't it be awful to lose
I was just thinking
lose
that
your husband and your
son? And
awful.
it was very fortuitous of the women not to go fishing with those guys, or they would have been dead too.
So the shooter then stripped both victims. The victims' clothing was placed in their vehicle, and the number plates were removed.
What? He shot them and then he took their clothes off?
Yeah.
Why?
Who knows?
That's got a kink to it, hasn't it?
Both bodies were then dragged from where they were shot to their final resting place and buried in a shallow grave at the high water mark in the riverbed sand. The vehicle was driven a short distance and then set on fire. The shooter then left and returned to the Victoria Highway and was later seen at the Wayside Inn by a witness before he travelled west towards the Western Australian border.
Oh, death on wheels, this guy.
Absolutely. 4 days later, Julie Warren and her fiancé Philip Walkemeyer and their friend Terry Bolt set up camp at the Pentecost River Crossing picnic area in Western Australia. They were later joined by David Mackenzie and Daniel Rowe. Mackenzie worked with Walkemeyer and Bolt at the Department of Aviation in Kununurra.
Wow. Hey, good work saying all those names in such quick succession without fucking it up.
Thank you. The group remained fishing until shortly before midnight when they all decided to turn in. Let's go to bed. It's been a hard day of fishing. The following morning they fished and they had breakfast together before Mackenzie and Rowe departed for their return trip to Kununurra. The next day at around 4 p.m, Frederick Pierce Young, who was driving a Kentworth Road train from Mount Barnett to Wyndham along the Gibb River Road...
Oh, he's driving a truck?
He's driving a truck.
Just like Des Ackerman.
Nice one, Dackerman, driving your truck. Approached the top of the Pentecost Ranges and observed a column of black smoke coming from the vicinity of the Pentecost River Crossing picnic area. He noticed that the fire was back from the picnic area towards the river crossing, and it appeared to be coming from a gully.
Ooh. No one likes gully fires.
As he passed over the crossing, he noticed a white Toyota about 200 yards behind him. Pierce Young slowed down and moved his vehicle to the left, and the white vehicle passed him. He described the vehicle as being a Toyota Hilux 4Runner with red flashes down the side, a rear canopy, and was bearing Queensland plates. He described the driver of this vehicle as being male and of small build, and noticed that the rear section of the vehicle contained a quantity of what he thought to be camping gear.
Okay, so he said he was of small build. Do you think this whole murder spree is just like a gross act of short man syndrome?
Look, I know plenty of short guys and they're fine.
Yeah, I'm not saying all short men are insane. I'm just like putting it out there as some kind of motive.
Well, just because you can swat planes out of the sky,
I can.
Don't stop putting down short people just because you're tall.
Some short men hate me just because I'm tall and because I'm a
cunt. Do you watch Veep? Can I call you Jonah?
Oh my God, yes. Veep is the best and Jonah's hilarious. Yes, I have the charisma of Jonah. Oh, Jesus.
All right, back to our story. On Monday, Mackenzie went to work and found that neither Walkemeyer nor Bolt were there. He made a few calls and found out that Warren was not at her workplace too, and none of them were at their home addresses.
Oh.
David Mackenzie decided to go back to the Pentecost River area campsite and look for them. He found Walkemeyer's burnt-out vehicle in a gully surrounded by an area of burnt scrub. He located Walkemeyer's boat on the opposite side of the riverbank. David Mackenzie then decided to call the police.
Imagine how eerie it would be going out there and finding that. Like, just that sense that something terrible had happened and you're in the middle of nowhere alone.
I know there's not one single crime that Wolf Creek is based on, but I'm pretty sure this is one of them.
Oh, yeah. It was just that horror of the isolation in the outback.
Absolutely.
If someone's messing your shit up, like, there's no one around to help you.
A search was conducted of the surrounding area, and at about 4:18 p.m, the naked body of Julie Warren was located lying face down at the edge of the river. A small wound was evident in the area of her right shoulder. 2 hours later, the naked body of Philip Walkemeyer was located in the Pentecost River close to the campsite. The body was removed from the river and found to have extensive injuries to the right side of the head, 2 wounds in the back and 1 in the right shoulder. The next morning, the naked body of Terry Bolt was located on the south bank of the river.
Okay, so he shot them all and then he took their clothes off again.
Yeah, and rolled them into the river.
Right. Maybe he's like a frustrated nudist.
Yeah.
No, sorry. Like I know that's not particularly funny. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, there's no resolution on this one.
Yeah. Oh well. Okay.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
A search of the crime scene revealed shoe impressions from ripple-soled shoes similar to those found at the Victoria River Northern Territory homicide scene. 5 fired cartridge cases from a .223 rifle were also discovered. Tire impressions were taken.
Yep. They work well.
With plaster, I guess.
Yeah, they do the plaster thing. Because then they can like photograph them in 3D and stuff, and it just makes it better than just having a picture.
Police theorised that Warren, Welcomine and Bolt were observed at their campsite by the killer from high ground. He then approached the three through high grass.
This is why you don't go fishing or camping without a helmet, a bulletproof vest, and, I don't know, like 27,000 guns, I guess.
When approximately 100 metres from the group, he came out into the open, firing the Mini 14 and transversing in an arc around the campsite, as evidenced by shoe impressions, tracks, flattened grass, and spent cartridge cases. Each body was then stripped and rolled into the Pentecost River.
Fucking freak. Murderous freak.
Several sightings of the offender's vehicle were made in the Northern Territory and Western Australia, and it was described as a white Toyota Hilux 4Runner utility with a fiberglass canopy. The vehicle had a series of reddish-pink rectangle shapes or lines on both sides running from the front doors to the rear wheel arches.
Yeah, probably made with the blood of his victims.
On June 10, the white Toyota passed through WA Agriculture Protection Board's checkpoint on the Northern Territory Western Australian border. The registration number was recorded.
Mm-hmm.
By June 15, police had established roadblocks throughout the Kimberley and Pilbara regions, as well as Victoria River District in the Northern Territory. Pilbara.
Yeah. That's what posh
Pilbara.
people say.
So this time, police were well aware that they were looking for this white Toyota.
Yeah.
They traced the plates to a German tourist, Josef Schwab, who had hired their Toyota. Josef had not returned the vehicle, which was by now overdue.
Wow, that kind of pales into comparison when you think about the murder spree.
Yeah, so Avis are shaking their fist at a Josef as well, I guess.
Yeah, they can just join the queue there.
Peter Lutenagger, he's a helicopter pilot from Campbell Station.
He sounds cool.
And he was in his helicopter. He was listening to country music. Apparently, it was Slim Dusty.
Oh, like pub with no beer or something.
This was in the police report that he was listening to Slim Dusty.
Well, they've got to get all of the pertinent facts.
Well, that's true. He was mustering wild horses in a remote corner of the Jubilee Downs station, and he flew right over the wanted vehicle. He immediately thought he'd better contact the cops.
Good thinking.
Yeah. You see, Josef was now the most wanted man in Australia.
But not sexually.
No. So Lutenagger flew his helicopter to Fitzroy Crossing. That's where the police station was, and he landed and reported the sighting, which was 10 miles away. 2 police aircraft were dispatched to convey the TRG.
Tactical Response Group.
That's right, to Fitzroy Crossing. And as they reached a position some 50 metres from the vehicle, the aircraft flew low overhead, and it seems that Josef was unaware of the approach from the east, as it was low flying. So the one from the west, it disturbed him, and he emerged from the driver's side door of his vehicle.
Uh-oh.
He had no shirt on, just camo pants on and no shoes, and he was yelling at them, shaking his fist. And he fired at the aircraft with his bolt-action rifle, which was fitted with a telescopic sight.
Of course it was.
Both pilots heard the shots and thought an airplane had been hit, and they had to swerve and avoid being shot.
Yeah, that's expensive and, well, dangerous.
Police called on the man to stop shooting and identified themselves as the Popo. We are the Popo, stop the shooting.
I'm pretty sure that's exactly what... Was that a quote? Was that a clip?
Josef immediately fired at the police, and the sergeant in charge, Sergeant Matson, called on his team to engage the shooter. In the first rounds fired, the Seiko rifle was shot out of the hands of Josef, wounding him in the left hand.
Oh, good shot.
Josef then snatched up his .223 Ruger Mini 14 and retreated in a westerly direction.
Westerly?
Police responded by firing tear gas rounds at and near the vehicle, starting a fire, which burnt fiercely in the tall, dry grass, endangering the vehicle and campsite. Yosef ran off into the bush, carrying his ruka, and the TRG advanced under covering fire. Yosef then stopped, positioned himself, and returned fire at police. This happened on several occasions. Yosef's actions were a military tactic in which an individual fires at the enemy to keep them from advancing. He then moves to a new position and repeats the activity until his escape is accomplished.
He must have been pretty annoyed, like, having people actually know he was there and being armed and shooting at him.
Well, they didn't know they were the hostages. They didn't know.
Yeah. No, but I'm just thinking, like, Yosef really likes to just be a creeper who creeps up on unarmed people and, like, makes them get shot in the back. So this must have been quite different to what he wanted.
I don't want to tell the Popo how to do their job, but I don't think they should have flown planes over him.
Well, it sounds like that's what tipped him off.
That they should have just crept up on him.
Yeah, got him by surprise.
Yeah. The TRG were unaware that Yosef had been hit, as he had not been sighted since he had left the vehicle. They were, however, aware of the general direction in which he ran. One of the TRG, Constable Trindle, had a projectile pass through his pocket on the right sleeve of his shirt.
Oh, but it didn't hurt him.
Yeah.
Whoa.
The police, attempting to see through smoke and gas, concentrated their fire in the general direction taken by Schwab, who was firing at them from concealed positions. So it was getting behind anthills, things like that. There's lots of
ducking down.
Yeah. Yosef blasted round after round at the TRG, who ran from anthill to tree trunk, all the time moving closer, cutting off possible exit routes.
Ooh.
The anthills exploded and some of the smaller trees were sheared in half by heavy fire. Miraculously, no police were wounded, though their gear took a lot of hits.
Yeah, that's why you got to wear the gear.
As Yosef continued to pepper the police, they returned the compliment.
There was a compliment? Being shot's a compliment now?
One police bullet shattered the wooden stock of Yosef's rifle and blew off his right thumb.
Oh, suck it, Yosef.
He unleashed another hail of bullets before another round of fire from the TRG hit him in the stomach and he fell. He lay still as the police cautiously approached. Then, like one of the characters in a horror film who refuses to die, Joseph leapt to his feet and levelled his rifle at the police. "Open fire," shouted Inspector Bob Brown. At the command, an officer shot the man through the heart. He fell dead, face down in the dust as blood pooled around him.
Whoa. And then did the cops take all his clothes off, like he
and
was
rolled
wont
him
to
into
do?
the river?
Yes. They thought that would be fitting.
There was a stockman there, Alan Simpson. He saw it all, and here's a quote from him. I quote: "The police gave him a body wound first, and he lay doggo. Then he got up, shot in the stomach, and he just kept coming. The police opened up and eliminated him."
Right,
End
mate.
quote. That's by Alan Simpson.
Yeah, I like his voice. It's sexy.
Inspector Bob Brown distinguished himself following the shootout by running to the white 4Runner and driving out of the burning scrub. In doing so, he preserved important incriminating evidence, including the shooter's passport, the boot in which he had left a print of both murder scenes, and belongings stolen from his victims.
And a hell of a lot of buffalo horns.
Apparently, he stole all their fishing gear.
Okay, maybe he had plans to fish a lot.
The police air wing pilots located Yosef's body and its position was relayed back to the TRG. The body was lying face down on the ground, clad in only a pair of military-style camouflage trousers with no shirt or shoes.
Oh, he's half nude.
None of the TRG members were aware of the identity of the member who fired the fatal shot, as the projectile passed through Yosef's body and was not recovered. There is no ballistics evidence to prove which police firearm discharged the fatal round.
Oh, okay, so it's more of a group effort.
I think that's good.
I think so too. Obviously, they're going to have to work as a team quite well to get the job done, so that's fitting.
It's like that thing with the electric chair, they'll have 3 people push a button.
Oh, right, so that no one feels like...
And it's a random thing of which button it was actually that did it.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they do the same thing with lethal injection. They have these levers that you pull.
Yeah, and they have like a variety of people. They have like placebo lever pullers, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Hey, okay. That's probably a good idea.
So, Joseph Schwab. And we'll never know why he did it.
Yeah, so he didn't have like a journal, dear diary,
No journal,
I hate everyone.
Nothing like that.
I really like fishing gear. Why are people wearing clothes? I want to kill.
No, the police investigated, spoke to his family. No one could work out why.
He just went feral out in the wild.
He just snapped.
Yeah, that's bizarre. I wonder if when he came to Australia, that was his goal, was to like fuck up Australians, or if he just sort of, that country was great, I'm going to go there again, and then he just
And even the way that he did it, wasn't like he was hunting people or
Well, I mean, kind of was.
It's just executing them.
Yeah, but there's a slight element of hunting. And if like it's kind of like a spider, like if he feels his web getting like shaken a little bit, like as in like he happens across people and he goes and hunts them. That wasn't a good analogy. Should I launch?
Yes.
All right.
Do it.
Well, they call my guy the monster of Miramichi, and he is very monster-like. Alan Joseph Leger was born in Chatham, New Brunswick, in Canada, on February 13th, 1948. His father deserted the family when Alan was quite young. I guess he'd studied up on true crime and realised that this was a great way to set your son on the path to becoming a serial killer. His father's absence meant that his mother had to work more to support Alan and his little brother. The Miramichi region, where Alan grew up, possessed a lot of natural beauty and a strong sense of community. It was one of those places where people left their keys in their unlocked car ignitions and didn't lock their doors at night. Can we all maybe agree that at this point in humanity's depraved evolution, everyone might just want to be locking their doors, just in case?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. The children they went to school with made fun of Alan and his brother for not having a dad, because children can be cruel and lacking in imagination.
How do you tease someone for not having a dad?
Hey, no dad! Where's your dad? Did he leave because you're ugly and you smell like poo?
You don't have no dad.
Yeah, you're dadless. Did you watch, no, I was trying to think of something. Isn't there some kind of sitcom? Dad's Army? Did you watch Dad's Army? No, you didn't, because you can't, because you don't have a dad. Like, seriously,
Yeah,
that's just weird. I grew up in northern New South Wales. Like, hardly anyone had a dad there. There was a joke. What's the definition of confusion? Father's Day in Mullumbimby. It was just
Really?
like, yeah, it was like single mum haven. But so yeah, we didn't get picked on for that there. They thought of other ways, but yeah. Anyway, all this teasing made little Alan feel like people were unfriendly assholes. Alan didn't have many friends growing up, but fortunately he and his brother, who was only 1 year younger than him, got along really well and they liked hanging out together. Alan would also tell his mother about his growing feelings of hatred for people, and apparently she'd tell him that people were there to love, respect and cherish, which is like also bullshit.
Oh, that's bullshit.
Yeah, well, but she was just trying to like short circuit his developing rage and hatred for humanity. Alan started skipping school to avoid being bullied. I used to do that too. And so I could watch Days of Our Lives.
You like Days of Our Lives?
I loved it when I was a kid. I had some friends who were homeschooled and they used to watch it and I got hooked. It was like heroin. Did you used to skip school?
Oh, I need to watch porn with my school buddies until we got busted by his grandma. But we've talked about this.
I was going to say, is that the one where the grandma walked in and caught you?
Yeah.
So Alan left school when he was 16, which must have been a relief for him. But his mum was pissed at him as he didn't get a job and still expected her to support him, but she was just really overdoing that. Then something even shittier happened. His little brother got run over by a truck and died instantly.
You're kidding?
Nah.
That's awful.
Yeah, well, it was not only his brother, it was kind of his only friend.
So how old was he when this happened?
Mid-teens. Alan's like 16 or 17 and his brother's a year younger.
Oh, it's awful.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously this devastated Alan and his mother. It might have just been the grief talking, or maybe she was a bit psychic. But...
You ain't got no dad. Yeah, your brother's dead.
Oh, God. Yeah, thank God he'd finished school by this point, because that would have been what they said. So, yeah, his mother actually told Alan that the wrong son had been killed and that it was him who should have died instead of his brother.
Ah.
Yeah, harsh and damaging words, Mum. Way to make the school kids look friendly. Yeah, so that's like the worst.
I tell my kids that they're their favourite all the time. They're my favourite all the time. when the other one can hear.
Oh, really? And how does this psychological torture shape the men of the future?
Oh, I don't know. I just like pitting them against each other.
Yeah, do you make them fight for your love?
That's right.
What, a little Thunderdome?
They know I'm just kidding.
2 boys enter, 1 boy leaves. Bit
That's
of Mad
right.
Max action.
That's right.
Yeah, awesome. So the hatred that Alan felt for the community reached new heights as he now had no one in the world to support him. Confronted with this situation, he did what any sane person would do. He moved to Ottawa and became a car salesman. He was a lonely guy.
Is that what people do? They
Yeah.
move to Ottawa and become a car salesman?
Become a car salesman. Oh, man, I've been on the brink of moving to Ottawa and becoming a car salesman several times this week. but haven't just crossed over yet.
No.
Things aren't bad enough. Touch
It's
wood.
only a matter of time.
Well, possibly.
TikTok Clarice.
Yeah, possibly. If I go missing, I'm in Ottawa selling cars. Or someone killed me. He was a lonely guy with no friends or family who was unlucky in love, as women didn't respond well to his obsessive hatred of people.
No?
No. His Tinder profile was just like him giving the finger and snarling.
I hate everybody.
Yeah, I hate everybody, including you, bitch.
Nice.
Didn't respond well to that.
No.
Don't know why not. He would have been good for a hate fuck. By his late 20s, Alan was completely over having to fit in with society and decided to turn his hand to petty theft. Like most things in life, he wasn't very good at it and would sometimes get caught and beaten up, which made him decide threatening people with knives was a good idea. When he was 37, he quit his job of being a pretty shit car salesman and moved back to the Miramichi area. He burned through his savings in under a year and decided to organise a robbery to keep himself afloat financially. John Glendenning and his wife were a couple in their 60s who ran a small shop and lived above it. They were by all accounts nice people who were well regarded in the community. Alan started frequenting their shop and had seen that they kept a safe that contained all their money. Alan devised a plan to steal the safe and found a couple of knuckleheads in their late teens, Todd Matchett and Scott Curtis, to help him out with the robbery because what could possibly go wrong?
I don't think this is going to go well.
No, it's going to end up another Coen Brothers movie.
Yeah, it is.
On the night of the 21st of June, Alan and his Mensa think tank buddies broke into the shop and cut the power. They went to where the safe had been and found that it had been moved and figured that it must have been moved upstairs. Mr. Glendenning probably must have noticed like Alan hanging around and thought it best to move the safe. So, the knuckleheads and Alan went upstairs. They found Mr. Glendenning awake and beat him to death.
Ugh.
They then started beating his wife. They dragged her downstairs and raped her and left her for dead. They then left without stealing the safe because Alan thought it would arouse some kind of suspicion.
What?
Yeah. Really, Alan? I mean, stay on point, motherfuckers.
It's not a Mensa think tank going on
There
here, is there?
really, really not a Mensa think tank going on here. Like, could they not stay on point? What do? Go to change a light bulb and find themselves decapitating a fucking swan? Like, seriously, how do they get anything done? There were 3 of them. They could have restrained the elderly couple and stolen the safe and not murdered or raped anyone. And they didn't even get the money. Like, seriously, this is just stupid and destructive. Anyway, fortunately, poor Mrs. Glendenning regained consciousness and called the police. It took less than a month for Alan and the rapey teens to be caught, as they'd left a lot of evidence behind and the survivor of the attack had seen their stupid faces. Alan got life in prison but would be eligible for parole in 18 years because the Canadian penal system was being nice, I guess. The Wonder Twins were also put away. He lodged a few unsuccessful appeals before planning his escape from prison. Alan hit himself in the ear until he developed a gaping wound behind it, knowing that if it was left untreated, he would develop an ear infection. After several days, it became infected and he was taken to a hospital. Although under guard, he managed to lift a small cuticle trimmer off a tray and used it and a key he'd fashioned out of metal to pry off his handcuffs when he was in the toilet. He'd also managed to lift a small TV antenna and hit it on himself to use as a weapon. He confronted the cops who were watching him, and they're armed, mind you. They have guns.
Yeah, but he's got an antenna.
Yeah, like seriously, he confronted them with his pissy TV antenna, and they stood down.
Well, that's pretty pointy. Could stab you in the eye with that.
What the fuck did they think he was going to do? Improve their reception? Ah.
Maybe it was Wingardium Leviosa.
Oh,
maybe it was a wand.
They thought it was a magic wand. Yeah, well, they certainly bowed down to it. Sounds like the kind of weapon they'd use in old Doctor Who.
It does,
Tom Baker sort of Doctor Who. So anyway, that's how this arsehole got free. He escaped the hospital and went on the lam. He carjacked and stole cars to get around and stole food to survive, but remained in the Miramichi region, which terrified the locals. On May 27th, 1989, he broke into Joe Irving's house and stole a duffel bag, a pie, and $100 worth of meat from a freezer.
That's a lot of meat. And what kind of pie was it?
They didn't say, but I'm guessing it was probably like an apple pie cooling on a windowsill. You know, like in the cartoons. Those pies always get stolen.
They do.
People must put them there as some
Don't
kind of
leave
trap.
a duffel bag full of meat on the windowsill.
Yeah, you'll attract Alan Leger. Anyway, it's what he did on May 28th that really got people's attention. Annie Flam was a 75-year-old shop owner in Chatham, New Brunswick, which is where Alan was from. She lived with her sister-in-law, Nina Flam, who was in her late 60s. Both women were well-known and loved in the community. The Flams lived in adjoining duplex flats above the store that Annie had run for 50 years. On the night of May 28th, Alan broke into their place and easily overpowered Annie because he was much bigger, stronger, and younger than she was. He beat her face in with a blunt object with so much force that he broke her jaw.
Ah.
Yeah. He then sexually assaulted her and killed her in her bed with blunt force trauma. And then he tucked her body into the bed really tight, as though she was sleeping. Nina heard the commotion and went to investigate, so Alan beat and strangled her too, while yelling about how society had done him wrong and he would get everyone back for ruining his life. Poor Alan, such a sympathetic character at this point. Nina was also sexually assaulted. Figuring that he planned to kill her too, she cleverly played dead. And then he tucked her body into bed as well because he thought that he'd killed her. This is when Alan set the Flams' house on fire to try and cover up the crime and destroy the evidence. After Alan left, Nina hurried out of the house, but he was still lurking around and he pushed her back inside the burning building.
Oh, no.
Seriously messed up.
Just when you thought you've
yeah,
escaped.
I know, and you've gone through all this horror and you get outside and there's the monster shoving you back in.
What happened to her?
She crawled downstairs and called the police before passing out. She did survive, but she suffered 2nd and 3rd degree burns to over 70% of her body, and she also lost parts of the tips of her fingers and her toes.
Ah, that's some really horrible injuries.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm
she
amazed
was
she
quite
survived.
injured before the fire, so she really didn't need a fucking fire on top of it all.
She's my hero.
Yeah, she's pretty cool. When the news of this crime spread, it sent shockwaves through the Miramichi community, and many took solace in religion and church services to cope. The police offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to Alan Leger's capture.
50,000 what?
$50,000. It's Canada. I don't know. What do they just give each other? Fucking pineapples? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Probably not pineapples.
Mooses?
They give each other moose knuckles.
50,000
50,000 moose knuckles.
Actually, I think the plural of moose is moose.
Yes, not mooses.
I'm pretty sure it's not mooses.
Are you rubbing your face in a weird way for some reason or no reason?
It's itchy.
Looks fucking weird. Oh, okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Anyway, they set up checkpoints and roadblocks and organised many searches, but Alan was adept at surviving in the wild and they couldn't find him anywhere. He managed to stay out of sight for nearly 5 months. On October 13th, news reached...
5 months? That's a long time.
Well, he did have $100 worth of frozen meat.
Oh, he had that pie.
And he had a pie. That pie kept him going for ages. On October 13th, news reached Alan that his appeal to the Supreme Court of Canada over his previous murder sentence had been rejected. The court released a statement saying that they could not make a ruling while Alan was still at large, which sounds entirely reasonable to me. I mean, what did they think? What did he think? What? Yeah, actually, Alan, we're going to reduce your sentence while you've escaped from jail.
Yeah, that doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense.
Happen. I know that Canadians are generally pretty nice, but that's crazy.
Yeah, what's that about?
Yeah, someone had to do it. Last time it was me. Okay, so the police expected Alan to retaliate in some way because he's a fucking prick. And they encouraged people to lock their doors and travel in groups. At night, people barricaded themselves in and kept weapons close by. Those who lived alone moved in with friends or relatives. So the whole region was in a state of siege because of this
lockdown.
fuck-knuckle. On the night of October 13th, Alan broke into the home of 45-year-old Donna Dorney and her 41-year-old sister Linda. He tied Linda to a chair and beat and sexually assaulted her sister Donna in front of her until she was dead, which would just be horrible to be.
Oh, God, this story doesn't get any better, does it?
They call him a monster for a reason. Because he's a fucking monster. Yeah, that's really horrible. When he was done with Donna, he started on Linda. And the autopsy results show that Alan spent hours torturing and sexually assaulting the sisters before killing them. Yeah, that's makes my stomach feel sick and my head hurt. Then, with the Flams, he set their house on fire because this is how you show society that they should have been nicer to you. It's a shame that he hadn't heard the phrase "kill them with kindness," because that would have been a nicer thing to do.
Yeah, or suicide.
Yeah, why don't you rape and torture yourself, fucko? Firefighters were quick to respond to the blaze, allowing police to recover the mutilated bodies of the sisters and also collect fingerprints, hair, semen, and other evidence left at the scene. They were so badly beaten and messed up that they couldn't be told apart. You couldn't tell which sister was who.
Ah, good Lord.
Yeah. This would be the first time that DNA testing was used in a murder case in Canada.
Interesting.
Yeah, as there were no witnesses to these murders, the police would need to rely heavily on DNA to prove that Alan Leger was guilty of these two murders. The murders of the Dorney sisters sent the already terrified community into a state of panic. The brutality of it all and the fear it induced led people to put up what they called Leger lights. So these were lights attached to a pole that people installed in their yards so they could see if Alan Leger was lurking nearby.
Oh, creeping up on their house.
Leger lights.
I'm putting in Leger lights tonight, I think.
Yeah, I think that's
After
wise.
this.
The manhunt grew to be the biggest in Canadian history up to that point. Oh, and you know what else? He ruined Halloween. They cancelled Halloween celebrations. Kids weren't trick-or-treating.
Oh, that's just going too far.
Yeah,
I mean,
I know.
I've ruined a couple of Christmases, one Easter.
I've ruined
but
a
I'm
few too.
I will never ruin a Halloween.
No, you don't ruin Halloween. Not unless you're a pretty terrible person. I'm surprised I haven't ruined any. So terrible. Anyway, more things happen. Father James Smith was much admired and well known in the small community as the attendant to the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary Church in Chatham Head. He was renowned as a kind man who visited sick people at the hospital most days.
Oh, I don't like where this is going.
Yeah, it's not going to be a story about how he got a couple of puppies and was really happy, is it? When he failed to turn up for 7 p.m. Mass on November 16th, people grew very worried. A couple of people went to the rectory to look for him and discovered what a police officer described as a scene from hell. You know when a cop says it, that it's got to be pretty bad.
Yeah.
There was blood everywhere, splatter and drag marks, as he'd been dragged all over the place while Alan was torturing and beating him to death. He deliberately chose a priest to fuck with people in the community more. Like he's trying he's amping up the horror.
Like a beloved person in the community.
Yeah, because they were in such a siege mentality and a state of fear. Like a lot of people were turning to the religion for solace. So he's deliberately
he's
trying
really
to
ramped it up, hasn't he?
Yeah. It's really gross what he did to him. Father Smith's eyes had been gouged out. Many of his teeth were broken and his tongue was hanging limp out of his mouth as Alan had actually tried to rip it out.
Oh, Tara.
Yeah, his ribs were also broken on both sides, indicating that someone had jumped up and down on his chest. Yeah. Yeah. Really, really gross and horrible and painful. Bloody footprints led from the crime scene to the garage where Father Smith's car was missing. A lot of DNA and hair samples were found at the scene that were later proved to belong to Alan. He didn't set a fire, so they think that he might have been disturbed while he was committing the crime.
Okay. Well, yeah, he was disturbed. You mean interrupted?
Interrupted.
Because he was pretty disturbed.
He's definitely disturbed. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that. So the death of Father Smith rocked the community even further. They were just horrified. The media were comparing Alan to the boogeyman, unfavourably, I might add.
Yeah, leave the boogeyman out of it.
Yeah, fucking, we heart the boogeyman in comparison. And the police were really on edge, and they were starting to lose hope that they would ever catch him. He was just like this murderous phantom terrorising an entire region.
Like a ghost.
Yeah. Finally, though, they got a break. Michelle Mercer was an off-duty Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer, and she told the police that she'd been travelling outside of Miramichi when she noticed a car that had had an accident on the side of the road. She stopped to offer help, and Alan carjacked her at gunpoint, bringing Ron Gomke, who was a taxi driver he'd taken hostage, with him. As the car was nearly out of gas, they'd stopped at a station to fill up. Alan took the car keys with him when he went to pay for the gas, but Michelle was, pretty clever and tricky, and she kept another set of keys in her purse. So when Alan went inside, she drove off, saving herself and Ron from a doubtlessly terrible fate.
I have a question, Tara. Do Mounties, are they armed?
I'm not sure if they're armed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's actually an interesting
Maybe one
question.
of our listeners can...
Yeah, we could Google it, or we could wait for someone to hear this episode in a week or so's time and get back to us.
Yeah, well, we're not gonna do that now. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. Look, they have horsepower. What more do you need? Okay. Michelle, clever. Police set up roadblocks and were tipped off that Alan had carjacked a truck, which was eventually tracked down and stopped by police. The monster of Miramichi had finally been caught. When he was apprehended, he looked like seriously absolutely nothing like when he'd escaped. He'd cut his hair, shaved his beard, and lost a lot of weight while on the run. I've seen, there were actually police saying that if they'd walked past him on the street, they would not have recognised him as the guy they were looking for.
I bet they put a hockey mask on him and put him in one of those glass cubes.
Well, actually, in his mugshot, he has a black eye. And it's kind of like, yeah.
Nice.
You deserve a black eye, you total prick. So police later found the camp hidden in the trees where he'd been living for months.
A camp?
Yeah,
Right.
he was living in the wilderness.
Yeah, right.
Terrorising people and roasting marshmallows over a campfire.
Well, he had that duffel bag full of meat.
Yeah, well, I guess it lasted a while. Maybe he was doing high protein and that's why he lost so much weight. Low carbs. Anyway, when news of his capture spread, the residents of the towns and neighbourhoods across the Miramichi region, it was like the sun came out. They came out of their homes and were hugging each other in the street with relief and exhilaration.
I think there are the true heroes of this story, Nina and Michelle.
Yeah, big time.
The Mountie, yeah.
Yeah, and also Mrs. Glendenning as well. She gave the fucking Mensa think tank twins and Alan when they killed her husband.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the first murder that they did. She'd also helped with that. So on August 28th, 1991, Alan Leger's trial began. At the request of the defence, it was held outside of the Miramichi region because it was like anyone in this area is just...
You're not going to get a fair trial. No, everyone's going to have heard about it.
Yeah. It lasted 2 months. And although the police... they had a lot of evidence and they had a lot of DNA stuff. But as it was a new technology, they were really concerned that the jury mightn't understand it or believe in it somehow and maybe decide that they didn't have enough evidence to keep Alan behind bars. That was their fear. But thankfully the jury were convinced, and on November 3rd he was convicted of 4 counts of murder and sentenced to life in prison. He's 69 now, sexy 69, and he lives in the Edmonton Institution in Alberta. There was no talk of him being mentally unwell, but clearly...
Is that a criminally insane
no.
institution? It's just a straight prison.
Yeah, because there's nothing, and I read a book and I looked through a lot of articles. There's nothing about him being mentally unwell.
Yeah.
But I mean, he must have been to some degree because none of this...
absolutely. Just the brutality of it.
Yeah, and wanting to terrorise a whole region. That's got to be something.
Wow.
But the University of New Brunswick actually have created a digital archive where all the case files for Alan Leger's cases are kept. I had a look through them and they're quite interesting. They have a lot of documents and court drawings, legal documents. It's also where I learned this interesting tidbit from court artist Carol Taylor. She said during the trial, Alan passed her a small drawing and asked her if she thought that he had talent. I guess he was, a frustrated artist. She said yes and told him that it would have been a better thing to do with his life.
Well, yeah, a duh.
Yeah, spot on, Carol.
Yeah, spot on, Carol. A doy, but yes.
Yeah, so that's really horrific, hey?
Wow, what an amazing story. A lot of heroes there.
Yeah. It's lucky that there were some survivors because he was incredibly brutal.
Yeah, it just amazes me how dark people can go.
Yeah, literally. I understand people can talk darkly, but it's a very different thing to actually be hurting people.
Awful.
Yeah.
I think we need to lighten it up.
We do. You've got the Aussie As this week.
Yeah, could you... what do you say at the start of an Aussie As?
Okay. It's stories that have a quintessentially Australian flair to them, and they usually involve some kind of crime.
Yeah, okay.
And I know that this one involves some really intense bogans.
It really does, ditto.
Yeah.
So let me set the scene for you. This is one that I found, and it's... these guys walk past this park, a kid's park, and there's swings and slides and all that kind of stuff there.
Do we know where they are?
No.
Okay.
And there's this junkie sitting on one of the swings, and he's surrounded by empty beer bottles, and he's drinking a beer, and he looks kind of homeless. He's a junkie, and they confront him and say, "Why are you doing this?"
And doesn't he
in
have
the
a
park?"
syringe as well?
Yeah, he
next
does.
to him.
So anyway, I'm just going to play the clip.
There's God, I was about to warn people that there's lots of swearing.
There's a hell of a lot of swearing in it, and there are some racial slurs too. So just
yeah.
we don't agree with it. It's
don't.
just part of the story.
It's a story, for God's sake.
What you're doing in your country is a fucking kids park, mate.
It's my fucking country. I can do whatever the fuck I want. Why don't you just fuck off and go fuck your fucking sister, you inbred?
Oh, you're fucked, mate. Get up. I'm fucking sick of you.
I'm serious, mate. If you fucking come any closer with that fucking camera, I'm gonna fucking throw one at you. I'll tell you what, mate.
Calm down, mate. Calm down.
Don't tell me to calm down.
Oi, what if kids are around? That's all I'm saying, mate.
It doesn't matter about the kids. I'm here. I'm keeping to myself, all right? I'm here just enjoying myself. I'm not disturbing anyone, but you're fucking disturbing me, mate.
It's a fucking Monday morning, mate. What's that as well?
So
What's
fucking what?
Is that a fucking syringe?
No, yeah, it's a for what? What? Just because a fucking syringe comes out of me, all of a sudden I'm a junkie now?
Mate, look here. Look at this lady here.
Just fuck off, you dumb wall.
Mate, I'm fucking sick of it, eh?
I'm telling you now.
Oi, mate, don't arch up, mate. Don't fucking arch up.
I'll tell you, if this wasn't beer, I'd fold at you and you'd fucking break your head, I'm telling you.
All
but this beer's worth more than you, you fucking dumb wog. What?
Fair enough, mate, fair enough.
Fuck off, mate.
All
Have a
right.
bit of juice too. Have a bit of juice, mate.
All right, mate, all right. I'm sorry, mate, I'm sorry.
Yes, we have a bit of an ice problem in this country. I'm sure a lot of countries have them.
Yeah, we really do.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, but yeah, that's kind of funny.
Yeah, but it sounds fake because it's so over the top. But no, that happens. It happens. Also, there's another bit to it.
There's actually quite a few bits, and later on in the day, he sees him again, and the junkie tries to sell him some ice.
Oh, does he not recognise him?
I don't know.
Well,
but the next day, he walks past the park again, and he records another conversation.
And
with him.
wonder ensues.
That's fucking disgusting, mate. Last time the video went all around the world, everyone saw it, you junkie.
Well, fuck everyone, mate. And you know what? Good. Good, everyone saw it. I hope fucking Centrelink sees this one.
Yeah,
you know what, Centrelink? You cunts are cunts, mate. You fucking pay refugees more than what you pay me.
Because they're not shooting up in a park, you junkie.
All right. Well, you try having fucking 2 kids that you don't know, and you have to pay child support, mate.
Excuses everywhere, mate. I'm sick of it.
Excuses my fucking asshole.
Fuck off,
fuck
cunt.
off with the camera, will ya?
Fucking Prime Minister needs to get rid of you, mate.
All rightio. Tony Abbott can go fuck himself.
You dickhead. Malcolm Turnbull's the Prime Minister now, you fucking junkie.
Malcolm can turn me fucking dick, mate. That's all you can do. Turn it, mate. Fuck off.
Wow.
I'm speechless. Malcolm Turnbull bit's my favourite.
Father of the Year, I'm thinking.
I'm thinking Father of the Year. And it was Aussie as.
Yeah, that was as Aussie as you can get.
It really is.
Oh, when we were talking about podcasts before, I forgot to mention that I've been listening to some history dweebs as well. They're quite chatty. They don't always stay on topic, but they're such characters.
I've listened to some history dweebs.
Yeah,
they're great.
They are great, and they're just really happy to like be real and reveal things about themselves, and I really enjoy listening to them.
And I love the timbre of their southern
Oh my
voices.
God, the Colonel's accent it's like a cross between Foghorn Leghorn and Frank Underwood. It's to die for.
It's quite delicious.
Yeah.
Well, that's us. That's us done. Thank you for listening to another episode of Bloody Murder.
Please don't forget to review us on iTunes.
And of course, rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help us.
Yeah, feel free to join our Facebook group, Bloody Murder Podcast. It's actually really starting to take off because, you know, more people are coming in, they're putting stuff up. It's like, you know, it was quite new for a while, but it's starting to
It's a nice little community. I enjoy the chats that we have on there.
Yeah, there's some awesome and very funny people involved. Also, if you wanted to, you could follow us on Twitter. That would be Bloody Murder Pod.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week.
We will indeed. Have a good week.
Goodbye and adios.
Yeah, and keep kicking against the pricks because I'm gonna.
on, and they were using sonic pressure on my head since 1997.